video tutorial, I'm going to demonstrate two preliminary steps that you need to take in the data analysis process. Okay, these are things that you really need to take care of before you can really get into the whole analysis function. All right. In a perfect world, we would receive our data all cleaned up, looking nice, all formatted correctly, right? But unfortunately, when we're working with data, it generally doesn't come to us that way. Okay, so what I'm looking at here is a small data sample, and these were final exam results from a test I gave last term. Okay, and if we look at it, down the left-hand side, I've got students, and I've removed names, obviously, right? We scroll down, I have a total of 40 students. In the middle column is the student's score out of a total of 50 points. And you'll notice, right away, this third observation here doesn't have a score, right? And if I scroll down, you'll see that there were a number of students who never showed up to take the test, right? So those values, right now are going to cause a problem because there's nothing in there. And if you look at the percentage column over here on the far right, this is a calculated field that calculates the percentage earned by the student. And I have some errors in here, right? And I'm not going to be able to do really any kind of data analysis until I clean up this data set. As an example, let me show you. If I were to come down here and let's just calculate a simple average of the percentages. Okay, so if I say equals average, right, and I go up here and I select my percentages, I get an error, right? So this $ value is telling me there's a problem with this. Okay, and so right off the bat, I'm not going to be able to work with this data. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put in 0 values for all the students who didn't show up and take the test. I'm going to plug in a score of 0. And I've done that here on my second tab in the workbook. All right, so if we kind of scroll through, you'll see that I've plugged in zeros for the geez, I think there were 5 or 6 of them. Okay, and so now if I were to do some preliminary analysis and try to figure out the average here, okay, we have an average score of 72%. Okay, so the point I want to make here is that the formula is now working since we've cleaned up some of the missing data points. Okay, we'll get in a later video, we'll get into the whole concept of averages and measures of central tendency, and we'll do that by using our data analysis tool, which will enable us to calculate several of them all at once. Right? So cleansing data really is one of the first steps you're going to need to take before you can conduct a serious data analysis. The next step that I always take care of is I take a look at the data. Okay, so it's really valuable. I have this nice list of numbers, and numbers mean a lot of things to me, but a lot of times you just want to see what's going on. Okay, so one of the next things I would do is I would plot these percentages just so I can get a little feel for what they look like. Okay, and in this case, I've highlighted the column of percentages. I'm going to go to Insert, and in the charts area, I'm just going to go ahead and select a scatter plot. Right? And there we go. It popped up a scatter plot for us. Okay, now something to note is that this is not, it's one column of data, right? So I'm not comparing things. I can't really plot it against time or plot it against another variable exactly. So what we have here in the chart is on the x-axis is the observation. Okay, so I had a total of 40 students, right? And so each number here represents an observation that I had, right? All the way to 40 would be the last one. Okay. Along the y-axis, I have scores, right? Percentages of scores, and obviously it can't go over 100%, right? But it looks like I do have one that was 100%, but I have a number of them that were pretty high up there. Okay, so we can see the number of zeros down here, and we can see there were a few odd ones here. One at the maybe 22% and one at about 40%, right? But everything else was actually pretty good in the you know 60s and up, I guess, and most of it really was in the 80s to 100 range. Now, the question I have though is, do I really want to include those non-show up students in the average, right? What we're going to find if I were to, I'm going to move this chart over, right? If I were to go look at my average again, right? My average was 72, but that includes a number of zero scores. So maybe I want to clean this up a little bit more and say, hey, we're not going to count the no-shows in the average, okay? Because that artificially reduces the average, and it will artificially reduce a number of our other statistics. So in this next tab, I've gone ahead and removed all the zero scores, okay? And so if we look at this now, our student sample has been reduced from 40 students down to 34. All right, and let's do what I did before. I'm just going to run a simple average. If I go up here and select all these cells, look at that. My average now with the cleaned up data set with the no-shows is 85%. That's a very significant difference, right, from our earlier average of 72. All right, so cleaning the data is really important. Okay, now I obviously, this is a reflection on my teaching skills, I guess. So I obviously want my percentage to be higher, and I don't want to misuse my, my power here to provide information, right? But in reality, I don't believe that I should have no-shows, reducing the average of my students otherwise. Okay, and so I'm going to argue that maybe this data without the zeros is the best measure here. Okay. If we go then again, and we're going to go ahead and look at the samples, the values. I will do what I did last time, highlight the column, insert, and then just do a scatter plot. Looks very similar, right? Nothing changed for the most part, except there's no longer all these zeros down at the bottom that were there in our earlier visual, right? So now we can see, just the scores of the students who actually showed up to take the test. All right, and that's the end of this video. I'm going to come back shortly and do a video on measures of central tendency, and then we'll look at some dispersion measures and various other components of a basic descriptive statistics analysis. I look forward to seeing you next time.